to the point. We the people, we are the government. When you speak truth, you need free speech in order to get the truth out. Difference of opinion should be valued. Period. Doc Holliday, this is your scene. Is Trump one to hate on those of color?
No, he's not. Now, this is, as a president, as he stands and as he's handled himself since his campaign started, since he took the office, and up until now as he's starting his next campaign to try to get a second term. And thus far, the left has pushed a heavy agenda of racism, that Trump is pro-white supremacy, that he's anti-minority, that he's heavily racist. And the only actual quotes they've ever found of him saying anything are things from well before he ever thought about, one, of taking office, and two, some of them are in before he was a good business owner and an upstanding citizen of the world. As a person, humans are flawed and we say stupid stuff. It happens. I have said things, and if someone wants to judge me about my past and things I have said in the past, so be it. I've said some stupid things in my past, and everyone has, and he who is without fault can just cast the first stone, and I'll wait here while no one throws a rock at me. Because we are flawed, all of us, and that's the thing, is everyone wants to judge him from their pedestal. But there are people that actually called him out on being racist who have said some of the worst racist things I've read and heard.
Oh, yeah.
It's astounding. Yeah. It's amazing how people who have said some things that they have used the words that they have used, can stand and call him a racist.
Well, my favorite thing to hear or watch right now is when I see white men, white women outwardly say that they have white privilege. And I'm looking at them what white privilege do you have? You are the racist.
The white privilege agenda
joke
was originally something that was maybe in the 60s. Definitely in the 60s, you could bring that up as something, as a legitimate foundation of white privilege, when racism in our country was a legitimate defining and tearing moment of our country.
Yeah, you could not do things as
a legitimate black mark on our history. And I'm not going to deny it that there was racism in this country in the past, but that was all before my life, before I existed. I wasn't there to witness it firsthand. I only have the stories from people who were there and knew it and saw it and lived it, and it wasn't me. That's not who I am. I can tell you what I've lived now, and I can tell you from where I grew up and where I started to where we are now, racism has refounded itself as an issue on the grounds that the left is pushing racism as a living, breathing entity so they can twist it and use it in their power to sway opinion with racism. I mean, they scream about racism without any factual background, without anything to show for it. They just scream it. And if you say it loud enough and long enough, then people will have to believe it, and the problem is people do. And that's what they know, and that's what they push. And it's where we are right now. And Trump is not racist. I mean, heck, his own personal lawyer got bought out and started calling him a racist this past February and called him a con artist during a congressional hearing. It was between Representative Mark Meadows and Michael Cohen. And the lawmaker called up a black former Trump organization employee as evidence that the president harbors no racial bias. And I can read this on and on, but pretty much to go through that, during which he called Trump a racist and recalled numerous instances, and I use air quotation there, where his former boss, who was Trump, had made biased remarks, sparked back and forth controversy. And he's going further to say, country has seen Mr. Trump court white supremacists and bigots. He said, you've heard him call poor countries shitholes in private. He is even worse. Once asked me if I could name a country run by a black person that wasn't a shithole. And this when Barack Obama was the president of the United States. And he added, while we were once driving through a struggling neighborhood in Chicago, he commented that only black people could live that way, and told me that black people would never vote for him because they were too stupid. And it went on, and it was pretty much, it was unfounded. He was bought out, and he was making these large, illegitimate claims, pretty much lying on the stand in open court. And then his own, one of Trump's own black female staff, or his employee, came out and pushed back, saying that no, he's not a racist. That is not how he treats his staff. Trump has a record number, because the other thing, he gets called a sexist a lot, and I'm not talking about that right now for more than a few seconds here, but he gets called a racist and a sexist. And this is a female black staff member it is, and Trump has a record staff member count of colored or minority and female staff under him for any president in the past several decades, if not in history of the United States.
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Legitimately, and then you can't argue that, you can't fight that. And then because she's a black female that supports Trump, instead of her claims being legitimized by the fact that she lives it, she's there to see whether he's a racist or not. If he was a racist and did not care about her legitimately, it'd have come out by now. We're going on almost 4 years here soon, so it would have come out. True racists, people who truly believe that mindset, are not going to hide it that long. They won't be able to, because what you believe and how you act is going to come out. You aren't going to hide who you are forever. You can't. Eventually it's going to come out, and that's what people get found out, is because their truth comes out. And instead of people embracing what she said, she gets called a prop by the left.
That's crazy.
And that's something that happens a lot. Anytime blacks actually go to bat for Trump, and there's quite a few, of black minority and Latino minority that go to bat for Trump because they see the legitimacy to, how he's actually backing them, the legitimacy how the minority unemployment has just soared to better numbers finally. We're the lowest unemployment for minorities in probably my lifetime, and honestly, I don't know the actual numbers in front of me at the moment. I can only bring so many notes up at one time. People that want to actually go to bat for him, and because they're a minority, the other minorities have just been pushed down to the point that they call them just an Uncle Tom.
Yeah, and sometimes
and
much worse.
I've seen it in my workplace where I work. I work around prisoners, and if one colored individual dare be a right-winger or a Trump supporter, I'll be damned if he's not in protective custody by the end of the night.
Oh, wow.
Because he's an Uncle Tom MFer. So he's got to go protect himself because he dare have a legitimate opinion.
Well, it was really cool that you brought up some of the key things, because, and I'll tell you, people, you need to go look up some of the things that he was talking about. I forget who you mentioned, but there was someone who went to court and was listing off all these things. 3 of them came to mind immediately and completely debunked. They were they were trying to rephrase what he was saying. Like, I think when he was talking about African countries, he was literally talking about impoverished, disgusting countries. You can say the truth about a country if it's impoverished. Why is that bad?
Just to state the obvious, anybody with a brain would say this is a horrible way for some people to be living, regardless of their color. Because he would say it about a largely or a significantly black country, all of a sudden he's a racist. Well, that's garbage. It's just BS. You have to twist, malign, and take him out of context in order to make that statement, because it's not true.
Every time, and everything that Doc Holliday brought up, yeah, legitly, all of it is like what you just said. You have to change it in order to get what they want out of it, because it's not what he's saying. It's mind blowing, honestly. Did you have any other key points there, Doc?
Our recidivism rate in the prison systems is going down, and not since the night. To give you an idea about the prison system, recidivism is what they keep coming back. And with recidivism in the country, the state of Missouri is actually the only state that had a positive recidivism ratio, where from 1 year to the next, the amount of prisoners in the state went down. All right, to give you an idea how bad the prison system in our country is, that we have so many people in prison. There's only one actual recorded year in one state of the 50 United States where the prison population went down from year to year. All right, and that actually happened in the state of Missouri with the programs that they have in place right now. All right, and that was not that long ago. And since Trump's done it, we're actually getting close to that again.
So what do you,
instead of climbing so drastically, the numbers have actually stayed more steady. We're getting more people into programs where they are getting jobs fresh out of prison, where they're being sponsored out of prison, where their parole officers, their probation officers are getting them in the programs inside the prison systems across the country. A lot of states have picked up things where we're getting people taught. And I bring up the prison system because of the mere fact of numbers. And people don't like to hear these numbers, but the fact of the numbers is that the minority black people, all right, African Americans, if you want to be that PC, but go tell an African who's from Africa and immigrates as an African American that someone from Chicago that grew up there is an African American, and watch that argument go off because I work with some. All right, black people are 13% of our country's population. All right, with the rest being Latino, white, and Asian, and the majority is white. That claim is white. And I don't want to forget Native Americans as well. They're very important to our country. I don't want them to feel left out of this.
Right.
13 to 14% with a growing ratio right now. And yet, in our prison population, they're over 70% of our prison populations. So the numbers are there. You can't argue that. And we have to actually do something about it. And I see these people every day. I mean, these people by these kids who are minority kids in prison who don't have an upbringing, that don't understand the country's actual status. I mean, to give you an idea of just how swayed their minds are with this leftist mentality that Trump is bad and he's racist and this, that, with no background to it, and the crap that they're fed, and I can just turn it down, and I'm not allowed to talk politics in my job, so I can't tell them where they're wrong, and it drives me insane to not be able to open my mouth. And they just bring up unfounded fact after unfounded fact. They're just opinions, is all they are.
Well, and unfortunately, if you're to challenge them, on any of that stuff, which is unfortunate, you can't say I understand why they don't. That's kind of like with every job, you don't bring up politics. But if you try to challenge them, unfortunately, they wouldn't be able to bring up any factual evidence or point at anything. They're going off of sound bites, and we've mentioned this before, how much I hate sound bites. It seems to be a huge thing that the left media loves to push, and people buy it.
Well, the other thing is they only have one source of information. Instead of being able to hear from different points of view, they're locked inside of a society and a culture where you only listen to certain sources in certain locations, like your neighbor, or you only read the Ebonics Times or whatever it might be.
All headlines.
And that's the thing that's important, is that they don't have other resources. So when Trump is reaching out to the African American community and he's actually going to inner cities, you start seeing black people that are wearing the MAGA hats, which has got to make liberal heads explode. And that's where you make the difference, and that's how things change, is you reach out to the communities that have rejected you and you keep going back, and that shows credibility for Trump.
Absolutely.
It does. So what I see day in and day out, like the biggest thing that just astounds me here for this whole where racism lies and how flawed it is, that the racism isn't an indoctrinated ideal anymore. It's not something where we're trying to fight racism. It's where the left pushes the idea of racism in an open statement to say, oh, racism is bad and look how racist this is and that is. But the way that they talk and the way they talk about it and that they use it is it just seeds racism, is it implants it. And it's so heavy. I mean, I see more racism inside the prison system than out. And it's both sides. The whites hate the blacks hate the whites, the Mexicans and all hate each other. And it's crazy. It's ridiculous that you see this. And it's like, we're all humans, man. You're all here. Just, do your time. Stop with this bullcrap. But we've all heard of the Crips and the Bloods. They're two major gangs, and they're both
in the US,
predominantly to only black gangs out of California. And it was, back in the 80s and 90s, they were a big deal, the Crips and the Bloods fighting each other. And now the racism is so heavy that I have seen people who claim themselves Crips and Bloods sell together peacefully. But when some other black person dare speak positively of Trump, they'll gang up on him before they'll fight each other. Rival gangs. Anyone that's ever seen gang methodology, gang idealism knows that rival gangs don't get along. They will straight up kill each other rather than have to listen to each other breathe. And they would rather sell together now than deal with someone who's potentially right-wing minded.
Wow, that's crazy.
And
Well, at least they can't vote.
Mindset's being seeded. At least, yeah. I mean, and that's something that you know, one of the soon-to-be candidates, Mr. Sanders, wants them to be able to do.
What do you guys think about Illinois? I think they got rid of a lot of, what was it, just the weed and pot claims and just let them all go. What was?
Yes.
But it's still a federal
They did.
offense, so it's what, a class 3 narcotic or something. And until the federal government decriminalizes marijuana, they can still be arrested for it. It's just whether or not federal FBI are going to throw you in jail for having an ounce of weed.
Yeah, the thing is that you have to be caught by the federal, because most states won't enforce them if they've legalized weed. The state police won't enforce that, and the DEA usually works with local police departments in order to make those kinds of busts where the federal government's involved. So without local police actually involved, unless it's a major syndicate where people are illegally farming and distributing pot in a state where pot's legalized, and they're not, they're getting around the tax cuts and things like that, in which case then the local government of the state's going to actually work with the DEA, get those people in prison for federal crime. But that's a situation where, the state versus the federal government is a touchy subject.
Hey, what's up? This is Don Julio. Hope you're enjoying the segment, The Panel. Be sure to like it and subscribe to see future content. Take care.